Order, order. We start with questions to the Minister for Women and Equalities. Debbie Abrahams.
Number 1, Mr Speaker.
Mr Speaker, the Government delivers wide-ranging support for disabled people, including support in work and education. We continually seek to enhance support, for example via improvements to the health and disability benefits system, the accessibility of homes and transport, and through the delivery of the National Disability Strategy and Disability Action Plan.
Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The UN has found that the government has breached the rights of sick and disabled people, including their rights at work. And the UK's own equality watchdog has said that the DWP has discriminated against sick and disabled people. Given that only 2.7% of the government's work and health programme participants have a successful job outcome, what meaningful proposals has the government got to reduce the 29% in the disability employment gap?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her point, and it takes me back to our time in the Select Committee where I genuinely feel disappointed about that report, and the Government strongly rejected the findings in 2016, but we will continue to implement the UNCRPD and the Committee's recommendations through many of the policies to improve disabled people's lives. Whether it is Work Well or our disability employment advisors, the work that we're doing on fit note reform, we're absolutely determined to support disabled people in work. And indeed, there are 10.3 million disabled people, Mr Speaker, in Q1 of 2024 in employment. That's an increase of 400,000 on the year.
So the Select Committee, Caroline Nokes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I know my honourable friend is absolutely committed to disability employment. But please can she outline exactly what she is doing, both at the DWP and in her wider role across government, to make sure that inclusion is embedded in policy and leadership so that disabled people are supported into civil service jobs, particularly those who are neurodiverse?
Well, I thank the Right Honourable Lady for her point and her work indeed on this matter, whether it is delivering on the Buckland Review or indeed all ministerial departments signing up to Disability Confident, progressing to Disability Confident leader status and having evidence independently validated on the work, including as well arm's length bodies signed up to Disability Confidence. We are working with parent departments to encourage more to do the same. I would say 1 in 10 senior civil servants declare themselves as disabled, and since 2013 the increases of civil servants with a disability is now up to 16.8%.
Shadow Minister Ashley Dalton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A little bit confused given some of the Minister's answers already this morning, because in December I raised the issue of the disability pay gap with the Minister, and she told me from the dispatch box that the government was closing the disability employment gap, and she's mentioned already this morning that apparently that's happening, but the numbers actually tell a different story, Mr Speaker. In the period of January to March 2024, there were 100,000 fewer people with disabilities in employment compared to that same period 12 months ago. So why does she think the plan isn't working?
Well, I think the Honourable Lady, we could trade statistics, but what I'm very interested in is disabled people's opportunities and those with health conditions. Hence the work that we're doing on the Buckland Review, or indeed around entrepreneurship and the Lilac Review, which there'll be further updates to the House on shortly. I can reassure the Honourable Lady, if she's ready to listen, we are working on the Disability Confident scheme, further on the employment goal, and I'll be updating the House soon.
Andrew Gwynne.
Number 2, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In March last year, we appointed Helen Tomlinson as the government's first ever menopause employment champion, and she has been working up and down the country, visiting businesses large and small, giving them advice on policies to support menopausal women in the workplace, and has just recently published her 12-month review, Shattering the Silence About the Menopause.
Andrew Gwynne.
I'm very grateful for that reply. Labour is the party of women's equality. The last Labour government did more to advance equality than any other, and the next will match that record. We are committed to supporting women experiencing menopause to thrive at work by requiring large employers to adopt menopause action plans. Will the Minister do the same?
Well, as usual, this government has already done all of that work. In this country, in England, we've got the Wellbeing for Women pledge, which the NHS has signed, the Civil Service has signed, this Parliament has signed. In relation to women's health, we'll take no lectures from Labour on that. In Labour-run Wales, while we've had the women's health strategy for 2 years, they have no health plan for women.
Annalise Dodds, Shadow Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Research shows that 1 in 10 women with menopausal symptoms have left work due to a lack of support. In some cases, this will be due to discrimination. Women experiencing menopause know this is because of their age and their sex, but the law doesn't protect them on that combined basis. Why not?
Well, we already have the Equality Act, which protects women on the basis of sex, on the basis of age and on the basis of disability. And it's this government that's changing the face of menopause experience for women by rolling out women's health hubs across England in every ICB to be able to get support on the menopause, but also by our HRT PPC, which is available for just under £20 a year for women to get all their HRT prescriptions. And over 500,000 women in England have bought one of those prescriptions.
Annalise Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Where the Minister referred to Labour's Equality Act, of course it includes protections against dual discrimination, but the Conservatives have refused to enact those protections. Labour would put that right. We'd also require large businesses to produce menopause action plans, something the government has refused to do. We'd publish guidance for smaller ones too. We'd set a new investment target for women-led start-ups, and we'd transform the rights of women at work with a new deal for working people. The Minister for Women and Equalities, of course, has suggested that menopause at work is a left-wing issue. Does the Minister opposite agree?
Say that. It's not true.
Well, the Shadow Minister fails to mention the Help to Grow portal, which has been developed, which has a menopause resource hub, which enables employers to be able to use that information to better support women in the workplace, whether that's with flexible working, with laws that we have introduced as a Conservative government, or whether that's simple measures like even the uniform that women wear makes a difference in the workplace. This Conservative government has raised the bar on menopause help and support both in the workplace and in healthcare, and while Labour for many years could not even define what a woman actually was.
Andrew Rosenthal. Question 3, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, in this country, we believe in religious freedom. Everyone should be able to express their identity, faith and beliefs. However, this must be done in a way that respects the rights of others. Community cohesion in many of our towns and cities has been strained in recent weeks and months following the October 7th attacks in Israel. The boundaries of acceptable behaviour in the public sphere are being tested. That is why, on the 18th of December 2023, I published new public sector equality duty guidance for public authorities, reminding them of their legal obligations as part of the equality duty, and specifically to consider how they contribute to the advancement of good relations in communities as they deliver public services.
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend will know that in Romford, our national, country and county flags, such as the Union Jack, the Cross of St George and the flag of Essex, are flown with great pride as inclusive symbols of our shared identity. So, does she agree that all public buildings, schools and organisations should be encouraged to fly the appropriate flags as symbols of unity, patriotism and equality rather than of division?
I do agree with my right honourable friend. The Union Jack and the Cross of St George are symbols of unity, not division. And of course, as an Essex MP, particularly fond of the county flag as well. But the point is, Mr. Speaker, national pride should be celebrated, not shunned. That is why anyone in the UK is able to fly any of our national flags without needing the consent of their local authority as per government regulations which make national flags exempt.
Jim Sharp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for that answer. In terms of community cohesion between different ethnicities, what plans has the Minister to make funding available to enable community events whereby each member of a community can demonstrate their culture and their heritage with all ages and all groups, and to build relationships similar to what we're doing in Northern Ireland?
Mr Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. We encourage every celebration of the diversity and ethnicity that we have in this country. In particular, the government wants to emphasise equality under the law. We emphasise the fact that there are not protected groups, there are protected characteristics. Everyone should be free from discrimination. We know that there are many events up and down the country, including in Northern Ireland, where this is what is being celebrated. And I thank him for highlighting this in the House, and we encourage all local communities to do just that.
Stevens.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I would like to answer questions 4 and 5 together. The Department engages regularly with the Cabinet Office about the different options to reshape the current welfare system set out in the Health and Disability Green Paper, including potential impacts on claimants with different health conditions.
Stephen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. But proposed PIP reforms unjustly target disabled people in a cost of living crisis. The MS Society found that nearly 2 in 3 people with MS said that the application process had a negative effect on their physical and mental health. So instead of pursuing reforms that risk worsening inequality, will the Minister make representations to scrap informal observations to any PIP changes, as they've already done with adult disability payment in Scotland?
Mr Speaker, we want to understand the best way to target support to disabled people and those with health conditions, provide the right kind of support for those who need it most, and ensure value for the taxpayer. Providing the right support to people who need it most, really understanding long-term health conditions and how people want to live independently and also reach their full potential is key in this. And also making sure that disabled people feel understood and have a voice in this, which is why I very strongly urge people to be part of that consultation and have their say, because we want to hear from disabled people, and that's what they say to me. They want to be heard and understood.
Alan Brown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In November, when I raised the concerns of Parkinson's UK about the concerns they've got about the changes to work capability assessment, the then DWP Minister agreed to meet the organisation. 6 months on, no meeting, and follow-up written questions. The Minister answering has just given me standard answers about meeting a number of organisations. So the Minister step up to the plate, meet Parkinson's UK to hear directly their concerns about the changes of welfare reform to those suffering from Parkinson's.
Well, I try not to give standard answers, and I won't give a standard answer to this one. I have just recently met those with Parkinson's who were diagnosed early, perhaps as young as maybe 35. So I'm happy to meet more broadly with Parkinson's UK. I've just recently met with Mind, and as much as my diary allows, and both here in the House at events here, I engage with those advocates for disabled people and those with health conditions. I'm happy to pick up that meeting, because if it's not already in my diary, it should be soon.
SNP spokesperson Kirsten Oswald.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The United Nations Committee on the Rights of Disabled People recently concluded that the UK Government has, and I quote, failed to take all appropriate measures to address grave and systematic violations of the human rights of people with disabilities, and failed to eliminate the root causes of inequality and discrimination. With these damning findings in mind, can the Minister confirm to me whether an equality impact assessment on the proposed welfare reforms have been carried out, and if so, can we expect this to be made public?
Minister.
I write to the Honourable Lady on that question. I can reassure her I've met with her and with my counterparts in the devolved space on the PIP reforms and the wider consultations to really make sure that we're hearing the voices from everyone. As I said earlier in these questions, the UK is a signatory to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Disabled People, Mr Speaker. We remain committed to ensuring the UK is one of the best places to live and work as a disabled person. I come from a caring and a family that lived with disablement. We need to listen to disabled people, stop scaremongering, and make sure they are understood, and that is exactly what our reforms and engagement is all about.
Number 6, please, Mr. Speaker.
Me again, Mr. Speaker. DWP ministers continue to have regular discussions on state pension inequality. We introduced the new state pension in 2016, which improves outcomes for many women. Outcomes will equalise for men and women by the early 2040s, over a decade earlier than under the previous system.
Speaker, some WASPI women in Bedford are living in severe financial hardship because of having their pension income stolen in some cases twice. Their right to compensation has been tested and won. So does the Minister agree with me that given a WASPI woman dies every 13 minutes, the compensation scheme needs to be set up immediately, and although it should not be a one-size-fits-all package, it must be simple, clear and easy to operate?
Mr. Speaker, I know this is a very emotive issue, and for those, all of us who have constituents who are worried about their pension aid, I would remind them that pension credit provides a safety net for people on low income, so do look at the benefits calculator on .co.uk. There will be a full debate on the Ombudsman's report tomorrow, and the Government will, of course, take all views into account as we identify and implement next steps. The Ombudsman report is complex, it's substantial, and its investigation covers 30 years. And I do appreciate all parties want to see it resolved as soon as possible. As our Secretary of State has said, there'll be no undue haste, and we will be listening to everyone.
Question 7, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. NHS England plans to make further changes to reporting on sex and gender in national data sets once the Unified Information Standard for Protected Characteristics has been approved and published. This will unify reporting on 8 of the 9 protected characteristics, including gender reassignment and sex.
I know that the Secretary of State agrees with me that vulnerable women, women with learning disabilities and all women should be able to access same-sex care, particularly with regards to intimate physical care. This is especially important in light of the report, the shocking report by Women's Rights Network and Joe Phoenix on rape and sexual assault in hospitals and care settings. This is why the proper collection of data based on sex is vital. Does she agree?
The Honourable Lady is absolutely right. We are currently consulting on the NHS Constitution, which will give women not just the right to same-sex accommodation within hospitals, but the right to ask for someone of the same sex to conduct intimate examinations. There are safeguards, and we are looking at some of the incidents that are happening in trust to better protect patients, but also staff as well. And she's absolutely right to raise the issue of collecting that data to make sure that that is happening.
Kerry McCarthy.
Question 8, Mr. Speaker.
Question 8, Secretary.
So, Mr. Speaker, the Government has worked to advance equality of access to start-up opportunities irrespective of social background or race. We have a range of business support programmes and government-backed financial support through Help to Grow Management, Growth Hubs and the British Business Bank. The success of our endeavours to engage and support diverse business leaders can be seen in the data. In 2023, 44% of the 30,000 people in England helped by the Business Support Helpline were from ethnic minority background.
Thank the Minister for that response, although I found it a little bit difficult to hear it. But Bristol has a thriving and very entrepreneurial Somali community. But they say to me that one of the things that they constantly come across is that they're almost expected to set up businesses that just serve their own community rather than being part of mainstream regeneration efforts and the general commercial life of the city. So what is the Equalities Department doing to try to make sure that they can make that breakthrough out of just being community-based projects?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. I think it's quite interesting that a number of people do have that perception that they should stay in their lane. This government does not support any sort of activity that is segregationist. We believe that we treat people equality. We must treat people equally under the law, and all of the access programs which we do have are available irrespective of ethnicity. People should be encouraged to serve the entire community, not just people who look and sound like them. Some of the schemes which I mentioned in my earlier answer are available, and I would like her to note that the Startup Loan Company reports that in her constituency 42 startup loans were issued to ethnic minority-led startups for about £315,000. So there are opportunities out there, and I'm happy to write to her with more information if she needs it.
Rachel Hopkins.
Topical one.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, institutions should be able to operate free from ideological pressures. Despite Stonewall's attempt to have them stripped of their status at the UN, I am delighted that the EHRC have retained its accreditation as an A-status national human rights institution, denoting full compliance with the Paris Principles. As I have said before, Stonewall does not dictate the law in this country or indeed in the UN. Having retained their A-status, the Equality and Human Rights Commission retains its independent participation rights at the UN Human Rights Council and remains able to report directly to the United Nations on human rights issues.
Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. ONS data shows that 25.3% of women are economically inactive compared with 18.4% of men. And many women say access to flexible working could see them return to the paid workplace. What steps is the Minister taking alongside her Cabinet colleagues to ensure that all workers have access to flexibility in their working hours?
Secretary of State.
There is a lot that my department in particular is doing. We have put out multiple bits of legislation that will help to entrench workplace equality, whether it's around flexible working rights or around sexual harassment in the workplace. And there is more that we are doing even on the trade side. We continue to ensure that we have provisions which advance gender equality in our free trade agreements because we want to break down barriers and create opportunities for female entrepreneurs.
Andrew Jones. Popular man.
I'd like to raise an issue with the Minister that was raised with me at a recent constituency surgery. What is the government doing to ensure privacy and dignity for women is protected in toilet facilities?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. There are various reasons why women and men should be able to access single-sex spaces, and public toilets are no exception. So we are updating building regulations so that toilets in non-domestic buildings offer safety, privacy and dignity for all people who use them. There is often confusion, Mr. Speaker, between gender-neutral toilets and unisex toilets. We support unisex toilets, but toilets and bathrooms where men and women share the same space are the things that we are trying to get rid of with these new building regulations.
Frederick Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, during the Northern Ireland Assembly campaign, some female candidates were subjected to AI-utilised deepfake and grossly offensive content. What action is being taken by the government to regulate the dissemination of such imagery, where it could affect the otherwise freely expressed choice of voters at the ballot box, especially as we approach a general election in the coming months?
Mr. Speaker, the Online Safety Act did introduce new offences which criminalise the sharing or threatening to share an intimate image without consent, and that includes deepfake intimate images. The government is working to ensure we are ready to respond to the full range of threats to our democratic processes, including through the Defending Democracy Task Force. If deepfakes are discovered by users on social media, they should report them directly to the platform. In the case of elections, they should be reported directly to the Electoral Commission because it is already an electoral offence to make false statements of fact about the character or conduct of a candidate during an election.
Caroline Ansell.
Mr. Speaker, having endured an induced coma and 6 rounds of chemotherapy, 17-year-old Leonie Miller launched her new business at a Wayfinder Woman event last month. Would my honourable friend, my right honourable friend, join me in wishing Leonie every success and outline what support and advice is available so other young women see running their own business as a very real prospect?
I would like to wish Leonie every success, and my right honourable friend is right to raise this issue. In March, we proudly announced the launch of the Invest in Women Task Force. Its mission is to make the UK the best place in the world to be a female founder, and since its launch, the task force members have been working with the private sector to begin raising its fund for female founders, just like my honourable friend's constituent.
Sarah Green.
Speaker,
both Baroness Cumberledge in the first Do No Harm report and the Patient Safety Commissioner in the Hughes report recommend a redress scheme for women harmed by surgical mesh. What conversations is the Minister having with government colleagues to make this redress scheme a reality for these women who are still suffering?
Well, it's this Conservative government that's commissioned the Patient Safety Commissioner to do a report on what redress would look like. It's really important that we take those recommendations in detail, and actually we are looking at that, and we aim to respond to the Patient Safety Commissioner in the coming weeks.
Miriam Cates.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some sporting bodies have interpreted the Equality Act in such a way that they believe they cannot lawfully ban males who identify as girls and women for competing in women's sport. Does my right honourable friend agree that this interpretation is not correct and that it is lawful to exclude all males from female sport to achieve safety and fairness for women and girls?
Same State.
Mr. Speaker, I do agree. There is so much misinformation out there, incorrect guidance that is creating confusion. I recently had a roundtable with the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, and she and I both agreed that this is an area which sports bodies in the UK need to tackle more strongly.
Right, I'm not sure the Chief Whip is. Right, let us...